Woo! We are on the air. Welcome everyone to the MMA Vivisection with me, Zane Simon, and my co-hosts Eddie Mercado and Victor Rodriguez, and we are here to talk about PFL 2 Pro Fighters League Everett going on this poorly planned Saturday, July 29th, in the heart of UFC 214 pay-per-view time, one of the biggest pay-per-view cards in a long time. And PFL is running up against it with a really surprisingly solid card full of veteran talent that nobody is going to watch.
Yeah, this reminds me of back in when the WCW went up against the WWF, except not, because it's nowhere similar. Like this is like professional suicide almost. Like this isn't. I just.
It is hard. Other than them just not caring at all and just wanting to do their own thing regardless, it does really make you wonder why you would put a reasonably decent, interesting fight card up against the other biggest fight, like the biggest fight card of the year. Like, why? Yeah. What is Friday not free? Is Thursday morning? Like any other time, you could be doing this and you'd get more people watching it than on Saturday night at the exact same time as UFC 214. Maybe the hope is that there are some people who are just like, I don't want to pay for UFC 214 and I'll just turn on these other fights instead. But NBC Sports Night, I don't even think that they attract and the rebranding and all that, I don't even think they could attract the kind of attention to get the casual channel changer, you know?
Yeah. Nobody's going to be aware that this card's even going on.
Yeah, that's the thing is probably some hope of those people that maybe are too broke to pay for the pay-per-view, or they're going to wait for some other stream to show up after the event or something. And I don't know that that's a sound business plan. I mean, you're already on a network that I don't know how much access the average viewer has nationwide to NBC Sports. I don't know. I'm not familiar with any international deals. This is actually one of the best cards that they could put on. Even if you look back at the World Series of Fighting Days, this is one of the best cards that you could possibly hide from the rest of the world instead of showcasing the talent and actual interesting matchups that you've got. None of this makes any sense at all. And I was actually, unfortunately, as we just discussed right before we went live here, I was under the impression that this was happening Friday night. It looks like they can't find enough ways to get in their own way and make sure that nobody's watching this, and that's really unfortunate.
It's true. It's so true.
I'm going to run through most of the prelims here real quick, and we can talk about them just a tiny bit before we get on to the main card. The evening opens up with a welterweight bout versus Punahele Soriano against John Glover, 1-0 versus 1-0. Then another welterweight prelim, Miles undefeated 5-0, Miles Hunsinger versus Andy Negretto, also undefeated at 3-0. Then a heavyweight fight between two debuting heavyweights, it appears, Dale Soapy versus Jared Torgerson. And then getting into some more familiar names after those first three bouts, we got Lewis. No, he's no longer handguns, is he?
I hope not.
Well, he was put the guns down. Put the guns down, Taylor, and then he switched to handguns.
I feel like I kind of remember he had a nickname change.
They're both fucking stupid. I know.
Put the guns down. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Lewis put the guns down. I thought you were joking. I thought that was the dumb joke you were making. No,
that's for real. He is. I mean, I dig it. It's like his whole thing is like, hey, put the guns down and fist fight, which I respect,
Oh, well, that doesn't. But they're already going to fist fight, so
that's such a complicated nickname at that point. Like, there's so much backstory to that. Like,
Eddie, don't do drugs, Mercado.
Yeah. When it used to be Eddie, do all the drugs, Mercado.
Well, no, now it's Eddie, drugs, Mercado.
Okay. You're going in the opposite way there.
Oh, God. No, hang on a second. But this is the thing that I don't get. This seems to me like one of those situations where he gave himself the nickname, and it seemed like some real heavy shit to him. you know, and he's got to explain it, whatever. It just look, let's just go with it. Fine, fuck it. Yeah, you want us to call you that? Fine, go ahead.
And then years later, he's like, "Nah, man, nah, I'm not about that anymore." Like, we never thought you were about that. We always that was you. This is all you.
Why do you have to mention guns when you're doing this whole? This sport. I swear to fucking Christ.
Anyway, Taylor, he's got, he went on a good, strong run in World Series of Fighting up until a loss to Dave Branch, beat Phil Haas, top prospect, Corey Davella. A long-time, good, experienced, athletic veteran talent. And he's fighting Zach Kahn, who is 6'6" and looks like a serial killer in his Tapology photo. And
that's a good. That's a good point. Actually, he doesn't. He looks like when he's in county lockup, it's like, yeah, this is not his first rodeo. No.
Taylor was supposed to originally fight Tyler Vogel. Oh, he's supposed to fight Bruno Santos, who got shuffled up this card, and then Tyler Vogel. So Zach Kahn is a late replacement here. And then after that, a prelim or a lightweight prelim bout: Luis Firmino versus Eddie Ellis, two longtime veterans. Firmino, World Series of Fighting guy. Before that, a Pride fighter. We're talking classic Pride. Started fighting in 2001. Had a few fights in Pride. Lost to Tetsuya Kawajiri. Beat Masakazu Imanari. Then moved on to Dream briefly. Has been fighting around since then. Been with World Series of Fighting for years. Most recently got knocked out and destroyed by Justin Gaethje and lost to Brian Foster. But now he's facing Eddie Ellis, who has also been around forever, 21 and 16. He was on The Ultimate Fighter and fought in Strike Force once, otherwise just been a regional fighter kicking around forever. So that's fight. And then we got a heavyweight prelim bout. Former UFC fighter Jared Rosholt continuing his bounce back, looking still to recover after being knocked out by Kyle Alankar in his last fight in World Series of Fighting after losing to Roy Nelson in the UFC. And he will now be facing Nick Rossborough, who's 26 and 19. One of those dudes who's just the name that's brought in for every card that needs a heavyweight. Fought in IGF, Bellator, KSW, King of the Cage, a lot of U.S. regional stuff. Also on The Ultimate Fighter a long time ago.
OG from the Jeremy Horn circuit out in Utah, if you're looking at that.
So that's those are the bulk of the prelims. We got one final prelim bout that we're both going to talk about at the end. But, a lot of veteran talent, even on those fights. Like a lot of dudes that people have seen around. Guys
that will bring eyeballs, which is why putting it at this time on this day is asinine.
Exactly.
Yeah, like these are good, solid prelim fights. The headline of the prelim card is Josh Copeland versus Mike Kyle, UFC vet, Strikeforce vet. Two guys that have been around a bit. Cuddly Bear, obviously, just coming off a UFC stint, now in the World Series of Fighting, where he's kind of gone win and loss. He's fighting a lot, actually. Yeah. And Kyle, who's been around forever. Eddie, what are your thoughts on this fight?
Does anybody remember when Kyle bit Wes Sims at UFC 47 back in 2004?
Is there going to be
fucking awesome?
Is there an over/under Is there going to be an over/under on the betting line for Hickeys on this one?
Oh,
I sure hope so.
Dude, he straight bit Wes Sims.
There's no betting line on this fight. Hickeys or no?
Oh, well, no, just the Hickey, not the fight result itself. Just the okay. Never mind.
Man, but Kyle's one of these OG, man. He's been around forever, and he actually got a knockout win over Dan Charles recently. And Dan Charles is no slouch. He's decent in his own right. But ahead of that, Kyle has just been pretty abysmal. So I honestly don't expect too much out of him, and I'm honestly surprised to see him still fighting. So I definitely don't give him anything outside of a puncher's chance here. And I don't even give him that because Copeland can take one hell of a punch, as we've seen when he fought Blagoy Ivanov. He absolutely went to war with that dude in one of the bloodiest heavyweight bouts I can remember. So I have to go with Copeland here. I think he's just fresher and can take the better punch. And at heavyweight, that goes a long fucking way. So I'm going to take Copeland, and I believe he'll probably get the knockout, probably in the first round.
All right, Vic, what are your feelings here?
That's an impressive take. Okay, I want to think that Mike Kyle of maybe 6-7 years ago would have faster hands, more precision striking, be able to actually touch up Copeland and do some damage standing, and maybe sort of work his way around some of the takedowns. But I don't really have that kind of faith in him right now, and that's not knocking him as a fighter. It's just that now at age 37 and seeing how he struggled against some of the opposition that he's faced. I mean, even just a couple years ago against Evgeny Arokin at the Russian Super Cup, or his losses to Clifford Starks, and then eventually over to ACB against Denis Goltsov last year. I don't know. I don't really see him dealing well with Copeland just continuing to come forward no matter how many times he gets hit. And I don't see him dealing well with Copeland's top control either. Now, that's not to say, I mean, look, Copeland has many problems of his own. He is slower, not as precise, nowhere near as sharp with his striking technique as a guy who's been fighting for as long as he has could probably be. But he still has that, not only that durability. I mean, I don't think he's only going to win by Homer Simpsoning his way through this fight, but rather, he will be able to wrestle. He will be able to control up against the cage, wear things down, make things as ugly as he needs them to be. I mean, if Blagoy Ivanov couldn't put this guy to sleep with those rhino rifle fucking fists of his, I don't have that much faith in Mike Kyle doing it, barring some sort of concussion during training or some random thing like that prior to. I'm going to have to go with Copeland on this one, and it will not be very pretty, but it'll at least be a decent win for Copeland, and that's pretty much that.
All right, both picking Copeland. We don't have odds on that fight, so I can't give you any Hickey-related news or otherwise.
I wouldn't bet on it either.
That brings us to the main card, which is a 4-fight main card on NBC Sportsnet. And first bout on that card is a middleweight fight. Bruno Santos, Rex Harris. Santos going through a UFC stint marked by his remarkably boring control grappling, and now has had one fight against Vaga Vagabov in World Series of Fighting, and is now in PFL facing reasonably unknown Rex Harris. And Vic, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, Santos, I mean, talented with using his control grappling, which probably is more interesting if we're talking about strictly grappling, not as aesthetically pleasing for MMA. So this is probably the kind of fight that I would watch with no problem whatsoever. But the average fan, well, look, if you're watching this event, you're definitely not an average fan. You're certainly much more invested than the average viewer. But even then, it's still going to be a little rough to deal with to watch a guy like Santos and his style not being that appealing. Regardless of that fact, he's going to be taking on a guy in Rex Harris who has had a pretty impressive run as of late, fighting in WCC. He's been had a few fights in World Series of Fighting, 3 so far. Actually, no, wait, I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3. Oh, 4. 4 wins in a row. Decisions mostly. He has not been a consistent finisher in his career, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't make for an exciting fighter. Certainly much more dynamic athlete. Certainly looks like he's going to be faster and able to defend against Santos's strengths initially in the fight. But I think that as things go on, the pace and the cardio are going to be a factor that Harris might not really recover well from. I don't really see him doing well against Santos's just constant pressure and being able to break down his opponents. So much like the previous fight, I see this being yet another ugly slog that Santos ends up winning by decision. And yeah, I'm going to go with Santos on this one.
All right, Eddie, your take?
Rex Harris. Doesn't that sound like a porn name or something? Rex Harris.
Kind of does.
A
It
little
makes
bit.
me think of Rex Harrison, which is the actor, and that doesn't help you guys either of you. He was the guy from My Fair Lady, and
Oh yeah. He
Mr.
did one-
Higgins?
Yeah,
yeah,
Okay.
he did a lot
Professor
of porn.
Higgins.
Yeah.
Okay, well, anyways, so Rex Harris, he aside from having a porn name and sounding like Professor Higgins, he's won 6 straight altogether. He's got some pro boxing experience. His hands aren't exactly fast, but his combinations are educated, and he's really built. He's a physical force, and he's capable of slamming fools. And if there were ever a man that should be named Bruno Santos, it's Bruno Santos. He's just like this hulking ogre who's just looking to muscle his way to victory. And that's what he does. He finished his first and third fight and has been a decision machine ever since. So, I mean, he's been inconsistent as of late, but because of his level of opposition and just his just annoyingly capable way of winning rounds, I'm going to have to pick Santos by decision.
it does seem like a pretty safe bet. Bruno Santos is the favorite here, opening at -190. These odds just opened, so there's no.
Hold on.
movement
It's
them.
definitely not a safe bet. This dude has been alternating wins and losses. This is definitely not a safe bet.
Well, okay, I mean, but
He'll
Bruno
probably
Santos
win
has
if that's what you mean, but do
I
not
mean, Bruno
place money
Santos
on
has
Bruno
been,
Santos.
yeah, okay. I'm just saying it seems like the smart pick. I mean, he's been alternating wins and losses against Krzysztof Yatko and Elias Theodoru.
Yeah.
For sure. His level of competition is definitely pretty.
Like that beating Vagabov, who's actually a really good technical athlete and wrestler, but is also just nuts, loco and la cabeza. That tells me that Santos is still a very capable top level fighter. I mean, Harris has got a good record, actually. The dudes he's beating, a lot of them are experienced, are solid up and coming talents. But
I like that you felt the need to translate nuts. Like, hey, you trying to send us a message, you?
All right. Anyway, I think Santos seems like a reasonable favorite here. Either way, he's opened at -190. Harris opened at +150. No props, no other lines on. Oh, props are over 2.5 rounds is -265, under 2.5 +185. They are both decision machines.
I don't like none of it.
Yeah, me neither. This is like one of those screwy bouts that just like, yeah, it's Santos on paper kind of should win, but you never know.
All right. That brings us a welterweight fight. Jake Shields taking on Danny Davis Jr. Eddie, what are your thoughts?
I'm excited for this. Danny Davis Jr., the consummate journeyman. He's getting the biggest fight of his life, and I absolutely love it. He spent a lifetime just trucking along, and it's earned him a shot at Jake Shields, one of the greatest of all times. And that feels special to me. You know, Jake is elite, and it's just, this is a treat for Danny, in my opinion. And with that being said, Davis Jr., he's lost by 5 subs, and he's going to lose by sub again, probably in the first, but I'm low-key wanting Davis to do really well. I don't want him to win, but I want him to do really well. Shields, on the other hand, bouncing back from 2 losses, this is like the easiest fight he's had since like 2007. So there's no legitimate reason why Shields shouldn't catch a stunting right here on Davis Jr.
Indeed. Vic, any different thoughts? You giving Davis Jr. a chance here?
It's a battle of the Bay Area, and yeah, no, Jake Shields.
Okay.
Did you need anything more? I mean, what other context? I'm gonna go through stats and numbers for this. You're a bunch of hoes expecting more than that. Come on, seriously. Jake fucking Shields all day. Look, I'm not knocking Davis, but Jake Shields. Come on,
yeah,
fam.
Shields is the favorite. opening at -600. Davis Jr., the underdog, opening at +400.
Is there a submission prop for Shields?
No. There's an over a round and a half is -185. Under a round and a half is +145.
Man, that under a round and a half is somewhat tempting.
Let's see. What's the quickest recent submission on Jake Shields' record?
Shields will take some time to break him down.
He beat Brian Foster and Ryan Ford in the first round by submission. Those are his last 2 wins.
And Davis Jr., he can be subbed in his last submission loss was in the first round, a minute in to Jordan Nippleberg.
The fact you had to squint and the fact you said Nippleberg, man, shit.
I think under a round and a half might be worth a look.
When Shields does get submissions, he tends to get them very quickly, actually.
Oh, well.
He just gets a lot of decisions, too. He doesn't.
Yeah, but that's against like super caliber opponents. This is
super caliber opponents and Ed Herman.
Hey.
Well, you know,
Ed Herman's sub defense is better than most people think. I've gone to bat for that man more than once.
Is actually a pretty reasonable fighter.
Yes,
and it's true in general against very good opposition. Jake Shields, like most of his decisions, are against very good opposition.
I can see a quick sub here.
All right, that brings us to the co-main event now. A welterweight bout: Yushin Okami versus Andre Lobato. And Vic, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, looks like we need to do a little bit of coloring in the background here to explain what exactly we're looking at. To the uninformed, this would be former UFC veteran Yushin Okami, a great wrestler and judo player, taking on unnamed Brazilian number 78 in the UFC game Create a Fighter mode. Whereas in this case, what we're really looking at is a guy who has a lot of finishes on his record, a veteran of the Iron Max and the jungle fight circuit in Brazil. Pretty wide array of methods for victory that are coloring his record. And Lobato, you know, again, good fighter, definitely not ready for this. Do not be fooled by this 25-6 record. It's just not – he has not been facing any elite competition of any sort. Now, that doesn't mean that he's been beating up a bunch of scrubs. It's just, unfortunately, as we've seen in other countries, sometimes it happens on some of the portions of the Brazilian circuit, the infrastructure is not really there for some of these guys to have the most complete training regimens and be able to become the best versions of themselves that they can be. So what we end up having here with Lobato is, you know, the guy who's got really good stand-up. He's got a bit of polish. You know, he's much more of a generalist, and he does go for some of the, you know, his wrestling really isn't that great. He will be able to work off some takedowns from the clinch and generally stuff from up against the cage. But what he's really going to do is use his jiu-jitsu game that is much more varied and complete. He's not just going to go for your standard variation, just, you know, go for the arm bar or the rear naked choke or guillotine. He will attempt to get a leg lock or two or go for something kind of funky, but then just use that to improve position. Other than that, I don't really see him, you know, he still has some really good tools in his arsenal, but they won't really be enough against Okami. He's going to leg kick him until Okami eventually breaks and cuts the distance or just works in a takedown, which will be inevitable in this fight. And then from there on in, it'll just be Okami on top. And I don't really think it's going to take him that long to do it. I can see this actually being over by somewhere near the middle of the second round. Okami does not have many great weapons when it comes to his stand-up. It's merely a function of him using his strikes to get to takedowns. And that's perfectly fine. I mean, we've seen other fighters use this to great effect. The problem is that really you shouldn't expect too much out of that. It's really just a matter of seeing how long Lobato survives and how much damage he inevitably will do on Okami before he eventually gets down on.
All right, Eddie, any different feelings? You got Okami possibly dropping this one?
Man, John Fitch, Rafael Natal, Yushin Okami. These are fighters that I root against because they are completely unwatchable, in my opinion, outside of them losing in spectacular fashion. Can Andre Lobato win in spectacular fashion? Absolutely. 5 KOs, 17 subs on 24 wins. He's a killer. He's a finisher. Last time seen around was 2012. He's on a winning streak. He's won 9 straight. However, his last fight was in 2015, so that was kind of a long time ago. He's got some savage ground and pound, and he can stay on his feet. Problem is, he's clinchable, and Okami loves him some clinch. And if you're clinchable and you're fighting Okami, you're probably going to spend the fight with your back to the cage. So that's more than likely how this fight will play out, unfortunately. But I'm definitely rooting for Lobato here to do something spectacular. And Okami's old, and he's been knocked out 5 times, and he's on a little winning streak. But I will not. I don't like picking Okami. I really hate it. Even if I think I am doing it, even if I think he's gonna win, I really don't want him to. But Okami should be able to clinch his way to victory here.
Oh, Okami's gonna win. Say it. Eat shit, Eddie. Say it.
I pick Okami by Okamatry. 3rd round decision.
That felt good. I didn't even know I needed to hear that until just now.
I really feel like a part of me died inside.
Okami opens at minus 170. Andre Lobato opens at plus 130. So surprisingly close odds, all things considered, on Andre Lobato.
I never imagined that Eddie's misery would bring me this much fucking joy.
This is one of those things we got to learn along the way.
I need more of this.
My girlfriend.
Oh boy, I need another hit of that quick. Oh fuck! Wow.
All right,
we have one more fight to dissect here.
We got one more fight to dissect. We can't revel in Eddie's misery too long. Our main event coming up next: featherweight contest. Undefeated Andre Harrison, 16-0, facing Steven Rodriguez. And Eddie, I give you the opportunity to break this one down. Get a little of your own back.
Okay. All right. So Steven Rodriguez, 10-2, coming off unexpected, I'll say, win over Alexandre Almeida over in the World Series of Fighting. He won by split decision. I really didn't expect that. I didn't expect him to take it, but he came out showing decent poise. He was calm in the pocket, and I really like the way he's throwing his punches while he's in the pocket. He seems like he's willing to kind of bite down on his mouthpiece and throw with some heat. Almeida's a really, really big featherweight, and be that as it may, I feel like Rodriguez still looked a little undersized against him. And in this particular instance, I feel like he's fighting a better version of himself. And he's never seen a round 4, let alone gone the full 25 minutes, whereas Andre Harrison, he's been 5 rounds 5 times, and his style is conservative enough to maintain his cardio throughout. So, I mean, I really like Harrison here big time. He's starting to pull the trigger a little bit more. We saw that against Lance Palmer. He dropped Palmer early, rocked him with a head kick later on, and dropped him again towards the end of the fight with a nice little combo. So I like Harrison here, but because he really doesn't have a knack for the finish, this might go all 25. So I'll take Harrison. I'll probably take him by decision.
Rodriguez is only 5'7", so that he is definitely an undersized featherweight. Although Harrison too is only 5'8", but he's pretty bricked up.
Yeah.
All right, Vic, what do you read on this fight?
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm glad you guys mentioned the sort of differences in their physical composition. I don't really see anybody that stands out in Rodriguez's record that would have that same kind of physicality, nor someone who has that same kind of explosive athleticism, and be able to just drive through and take them down. Not only that, Harrison's boxing is underrated. I mean, he does mix things up with his kicks. I think this fight does kind of, I'm not really sure that it's going to resonate that much with too many people, but both of these guys are beneficiaries of being winners of fights that probably were not the most expected. I do remember there was a bit of controversy in the Harrison win over Palmer.
No way. He clearly put the
Am I
spin on Palmer.
misremembering as to which fight we're talking about then?
Yeah,
Okay, scratch that. I didn't say that. Okay, fine. Fair enough then. Let's forget that point. The main thing here with this
You're
fight
thinking
is,
of Palmer and Almeida. They had controversial.
Yeah,
that's the one. That's the one versus Almeida. Well, the thing is that, you know, we did see Rodriguez beat Almeida with a split decision. I wasn't really too convinced. I mean, maybe Almeida's the kind of opponent that Rodriguez can beat, and that's still a pretty impressive statement that he made in that fight. But I don't know, man. I'm going with Harrison by being far more complete, especially when it comes to his wrestling, especially when it comes to his timing with his strikes, being able to create opportunities for himself on the ground, getting opponents to open up and give him things such as an arm or a neck. I don't really see too many options here for Rodriguez to win this, so I'm going to go with Andre Harrison.
All right. Yeah, that seems like a safe bet. Like, I mean, Andre has been pretty battle tested at this point as a as a top level, at least regional champion. Like, he's built a style that's very capable of keeping a belt. And that may be a problem if he ever gets the chance to jump into a deeper pond where he has to fight his way up the ranks again. He may suffer from sort of the Will Brooks thing, where having a patient, controlled, slow style suddenly with a bunch of big action fighters that are looking to kill you can be a problem. But Rodriguez, I mean, picking up a tough, close win over a guy who is really pretty inconsistent in Alexandre Capitao. Otherwise, Rodriguez's entire career is built out of Costa Rica and fighting there. It's just not it's not a style that I would trust in a 5-round fight with somebody like Andre Harrison at all. So it's hard to pick against Harrison here. Harrison opens at minus 855, Rodriguez at plus 485. So everybody seems to be on the same page with that one.
Yep.
All right. Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up the show. The PFL, it's a good card. It's an interesting card. It's got good fights on it, good fighters. Nobody's going to watch it.
That's a shame. It's a real shame.
Yes, it is.
So you can find me on Twitter at TheZaneSimon. You can find Eddie on Twitter at TheEddieMercado. You can find Vic on Twitter at VicMRodriguez. You can find all three of us over at BloodyElbow.com in our various capacities. Give us a like. That's a thumbs up thing over on YouTube here. That helps us a lot. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, MMANation.com, DOTCOM. And that helps. All that helps. That way you get all the latest Bloody Elbow shows, videos, news, analysis, all that good stuff we're doing week in, week out. I'll be back for the 6th round after UFC 214, and we'll be back next week for UFC Mexico City and whatever else we can pick up, all our normal shows, Vivisection, If I Did It, Care Don't Care, Heavy Hands, all that good stuff. So stick around, and we will see you soon.